right. Welcome everyone to our second episode. Are these episodic really? Are these just hangouts? Who knows? We're still figuring it out. This is our second episode of the Wax Lab guys. I'm Jonathan, aka Kerf, and we have also John, Death and Strawberries, on the other end. Are you still there, John?
I'm here. Hello.
All right. Okay. Yeah, let me know when you have to duck out for that second. Okay. Yeah, today we're gonna do a little wax casting and kind of show some of the options that are available, different ways to cast for different kinds of molds. Then we're gonna just get to some wax sculpting. But the wax casting part is a key step when working with wax, because often you might be starting from a clay sculpt, making a quick mold of that to do your wax cast, and that can really save you a lot of time. John, maybe you can elaborate on some of the ways you've used wax casting, and we can do some demos.
Yeah, I got a couple examples. So I guess the first one is these are some molds that Kerf made and sent to me, some micro machine cars. This is a silicone mold, and I've used these to cast up all the little cars. It's kind of blown out in the light there, but these are the little cars that I made for the wax casting, the wax sampler kit. And so various flavors of wax, we colored them differently so we'd know which formula we used. But these are all little wax castings here. And then I got a couple of other examples of like I've got some Star Wars parts that I've cast in wax. And so the idea with this is you take these parts and you can easily change them and manipulate them, move them to a different position or add articulation or whatever you want to do. So it's kind of nice to have a starting point in wax. That was the Hensey wax, and then I've got some in the Kenner wax here as well. The same. This is a Luke X-Wing pilot there. And then I'll just show quickly. I've got a couple other things that I've cast. This is just a little dollar store G.I. Joe toy that's in the Hensey wax. This is actually in Quick Cast 300. So this is resin, but I actually cast this figure in wax to be able to manipulate it and change it, put a different head on it, things like that, change the arm, put a base on it, that type of stuff. So wax can be really versatile like that as well.
Real quick, John, can you change the orientation of your light? Can you have it come in from the side rather than the top?
I'll just turn that one off. I've got two coming from the side.
Oh, that's perfect.
Is that better?
Is that cast there white?
Yeah, so it's gonna be hard to see. But I was gonna show you too. I also have this. This is the Prospect one that we had talked about a little before, but this is all cast in wax. And so if anybody was at Designer Con, we had this guy out, so you could see it. But he goes on a little base as well, which I need to repair. But I had cast a little sculpture of mine, just a base figure, and then I added all the details on. So it's cast in wax, added details in wax, and I used two different types here, but yeah, just another use of casting.
Right on.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll show some of the things that I've cast. That could be good. Well, actually, the thing that when I first got into it, I think maybe if you're watching this video or you're on the stream now, you've probably seen Scott Hensey's interviews with, I think, Make Magazine on YouTube. It's one of the first results when you search for toy wax or something like that. And seeing his stuff, that's really where I was like, this is a medium that I think I'll really enjoy, because I had just come off of using Sculpey, and I couldn't touch the Sculpey while I was sculpting it. I had to like put it on a wood base, and so to be able to handle the medium without fear of distorting it was really appealing. So, but what he showed was, he talked about was that he starts in clay, makes that mold, and then makes a wax casting that you can refine. Now, one of and when I came across that video, that's when I was getting the idea to do a Kenner style figure, and I began to realize that it was possible to get vintage Kenner wax, and so back then, this is maybe now fall of 2020, is when I found this beautiful horse from the Philly Stars toy line, and this is a Kenner wax sculpt. This is a good 2, maybe 3, 4 pounds of wax. I'm bad at estimating weight, but it is a beautiful sculpt, and you can see the original parting line that they used here, but it was from the back of this horse that I melted down the wax that I used in the original plaster molds for my #2 figure. I only took off about a chunk, about like that. Now I actually forget if it had the butt on it, but yeah. So I'm not going to touch this one anymore. I've taken the pound of flesh from it, and actually just the other day, I had my wax pen in my hand, and I was reaching for something that was close by this, and I actually nicked the with the hot tip just a little bit right there at the at the nose. So be careful when working with your wax stuff.
I know a guy who can fix it.
But I think what that shows to me is, that likely started in clay. A wax mold was made of, or some kind of mold was made of it. Wax was cast into it, and then you can get that really refined finish.
Yeah.
So the ways I've used wax casting, certainly to make that the masterpiece that I would sculpt and refine. But here, I've actually begun to use, instead of making a separate clay sculpt for each of the 4 fringe figures that I'm going to be doing, I made a single master clay sculpt of that, and then created molds in plaster in this case, and then made several wax copies. And so now I'm refining those wax copies before I go into building out the details directly into these, and that's going to save me a lot of time on the clay sculpting side. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, so we've been talking about that for a long time, having a blank kind of figure to sculpt on.
Yeah.
And we had chatted, this is maybe an interesting little subtopic here, but we had chatted a little bit at that time about how, like, basically if you look at all the original Kenner line, they're all different. Like they have a different, each one seems to have its own separate little buck that's a different size. They're each taller or shorter, more wide, broad in the shoulders, or it doesn't seem like they've reused too many of those bucks, at least from looking at it from the outside anyway. Which is an interesting way to do it.
Yeah. I've been talking with someone else on Instagram who was a toy designer and worked with sculptors, and interestingly, he was referring to to wax bucks. That the buck in my mind had only been the hard piece that they would put into the center of the sculpt.
Yeah.
And but oftentimes he was saying they would use a Batman wax buck torso for the Jurassic line, or vice versa. And so in that way, I'm really creating wax bucks that I'm going to use as my base for the distinct designs.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense. It's efficient.
Huh?
It's efficient. Makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Yep. In this case, in another case here, I did a simple wax cast, and I did this on our last, or maybe on our first call on a separate, before we started the Wax Lab, guys. I used wax to, I didn't even make a mold of this clay shield for my Viking gator. What I did was I just created a little clay barrier wall around it, and then I just poured in cast wax into the little kind of pool, and got this rough shape here that I then sculpted and added the wood grain to. So the wax is can be a quick way to build a sturdy a sturdy sculpt without having to go directly, or without having to start in the wax phase. Very versatile.
I agree, and like you said, you kind of alluded to it. It's not like I have a couple of monster clay things here, and that it's great, except that once you start working on it, you start heating it up with your thumb heat. Things can get smushed and whatever.
Yeah.
And when you get that wax, it doesn't do that. So it's for that final step where you're trying to get those sharp details. It makes a whole lot of sense. Like, it's just a good tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you keeping an eye on the chat?
I am. Yep.
Okay.
Got a couple folks in there.
Cool.
Jazz Wiz. Fun fake name, Pocket Salsa. So
right on. Right.
Just everybody's just saying hi.
Cool.
But yeah, ask questions. If you guys got questions, throw them in there. Be glad to answer any questions you got.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to heat up any wax. I was dealing with some kid stuff here, so I've got all my stuff here by me, but it's all cold. So if you've got stuff hot,
yeah, we can start here. And are you heating it up now?
No, but I will I'll take a break while you're getting going. Cool.
Yeah. You use the hot plate, right? Or are you using a slow cooker?
No, I've got a hot plate, and I can show you. I can show you that stuff in a minute. But yeah, I've got a hot plate with just pans on it. Yeah, let's jump over to that when we switch over to your stuff.
Okay. Can you make it? Can you maybe turn off your video, and I think that'll bring my video into focus.
Yeah, you bet.
Cool. All right. I'm checking the computer next to me, and it's it looks like it's a good minute or two behind. Anyways, so here we go. I'm going to show a couple of techniques that I use when wax casting. I'm going to show my pot that I melt the wax down in, and then when I'm finished with that, maybe then we'll switch over to Death of Strawberries. Then we can come back to me, and I'll show you how I take the wax that I was working with and pour it out into a pan, and then break it up into chips. And that's how it's easier to manage it. So it's just not sitting in the pot when I'm not using it. But yeah, so a few of the materials that I'm using here are, when wax casting, you can inject it, you can pour it, and when you're pouring it, you want to use a plastic that can stand up to the heat. You're working with wax between probably 160, 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And so you want a sturdy plastic that can stand that heat. This is like a condiment cup and it's not good for long exposure to that wax. This is a takeout container. It's a little sturdier and also flexible. That's also going to be helpful when you're pouring and also removing the wax from the container when you're done with it. Now, let me just take a quick look here. I'm not quite sure which kind of wax or what kind of plastic this is, but you can pick up these kinds of containers at a restaurant supply store. These are also great for mixing resin, silicone, whatnot. Anyways, a syringe. Now, the size of the syringe I think is important. Smaller syringes, I think you're going to risk the wax cooling somewhat faster by having more volume in there. I think that tends to keep things warm a little bit longer. You'll want a lower lock tip that you can remove, because once you're done using the tip, it's kind of a pain in the butt to clean that out. But you can reuse the syringe and just kind of scrape on the inside when you're done. Now, the lower lock tips themselves are quite narrow. Let's see if we can show some of that off. This is probably about 14 gauge. What I like to do is snip the end here and give it a little tip. And that helps me to insert it into the mold with a little more ease, but also give it a wider opening for the wax to come out. Now, the casting molds, you can cast into silicone, you can cast into plaster. This is a little dump mold of a sculpt that my daughter made, and it's made from plaster. Now, I also use plaster for the parts of my wax buck, and I'll show that a little later. But when working with plaster, it's important to let it soak in water before casting. That'll ensure that the wax doesn't bond with the plastic, which I've had happen, not knowing any better. And yeah, so soak your plaster, then dry it off. It needs to be kind of cool and damp when casting, and then the pieces just pop right out. So I'm going to show an example of that as well. Now, the main feature here, to cast wax, melted wax. And so what we have here is my Presto pot. And what you can see here, I'm going to adjust. You can see it's got an adjustable dial here. This is a lot better than a slow cooker that has like a 3 temp setting. With the slow cookers, the wide base, the time it takes for it to heat up, and the inability to dial in the temperature can make using slow cookers problematic. Now, they're cheaper. You can find really cheap ones for like 15 bucks. This pot though was about $30 a couple of years ago. It might be like 35, 40 now, thanks inflation. But it's great. It's really no different than a fondue pot. If you have an old fondue pot with the dial on it, that's also a good thing to do. Now, the wax itself. So once it's in there, you put it in as chips, or if you buy Asbro from sculpt.com, it's going to come in a giant 2-pound block. There's really not a practical way to chip away at it, or because it's pretty thick too. So what I do when I get that big brick is I just put it in the pot and let it melt down. In this case, I melted down some old chips I had, but I'll show a little later how I create those chips. But if you make your own wax, or depending on the ingredients used in the wax and their ratio, there can be separation in the wax as it melts down. So what I'm going to do here is take my drill, and you don't have to do this by a power tool. It's just fun to use. Now, you can hand stir it, just stir it a little longer if you're not going to use some kind of power tool. But by stirring it up, you're going to remix those ingredients. If there's any settling, you'll kind of even it all out. So I'm going to do that before I sculpt or before I cast.
I'll say too, you get some fancy tools there that I'm old school.
Oh, with that done, now that will add a lot of air to your mix there. And so what I've found is if I just kind of slowly pour or slowly mix it and maybe let it sit for another few minutes because of the temperature, that those bubbles are going to rise out and you're going to get a smooth consistency again. Now, what I'm going to demonstrate first, while I do this, I'm going to let my daughter's mold soak there for a little bit. And also let me get my torso mold there. One second.
Yeah, and I got mine warming up here. I can show you guys in a minute, but got little well, you got a sec where I can switch cameras real quick?
Sure, yeah. And then we can come back and I'll do the cast.
Okay. I was just gonna show a couple of these. I got some cheapo molds from Michael's after Halloween. These are little mice silicone molds made for like chocolate making, I guess, of those. And I have some pumpkin molds too, and these are nice as just like dump molds. So like, you got a whole pot of wax and you fill your mold. Maybe you don't want to waste that stuff, so it's a good way to use that excess wax, and then I'll have little chunks of wax left over, and that's what I'm gonna throw in the pot. So these are smaller chunks that I can easily put in there, measure out how much I want without putting too much, and then be able to get started quickly.
Something, I think it was Scott Hensey that told me to control the temperature while you're and so what he said he does, he uses these same Presto pots, and he actually does a little mark on the dial so that he knows where to set the temperature the next time he does a batch of his wax. But by having the small pieces, he can I think he also pays attention to his temperature. I'm kind of doing it by feel most of the time, but by having those smaller chunks of wax, that you can essentially use those as ice cubes to bring down the temperature of a pot that may be too hot, and by throwing in those relatively cold chunks, you can control your temperature with a little more ease. So it's handy to have the wax in those small pieces. All right, so the first cast I'm going to do here is going to be I guess it could be called a slush cast, or it's I guess slush is the right way. I think Scott might have used a different term. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour wax into this mold, and then I'm going to dump it out, and then I'm going to pour it in again, dump it out, and little by little I'll be building up a layer around the inside of the mold. Now, the reason to do that is that with molds that require a large volume, you have to think about how the wax is going to cool once it's in there. And what I've been told is that large volumes of wax will, and I think wax in general, cools towards the center of the mass. And so I think the logic would be that the greater the volume, the more distortion you might have as it shrinks, because it's going to be shrinking and cooling towards the center. Now, by filling it and dumping it and filling it and dumping it again, what I'm essentially letting the wax cool in a thin layer around the inside of the mold. And so in doing so, I can expect less shrink compared to just pouring the wax in and just letting it sit and cool. So we'll give it a go, and then we'll then I'll show the other dump molds and then how I inject. All right. So now I'm going to try to do this without burning myself. Let's see how we do. So I'm going to fill that up, pour it in quick, let that sit for a moment, and then dump it out. And so we can see inside there, starting to build up a layer. Oh, ooh, that burns. Okay, hold on a second. Fun times. All right. Pour that out.
Wax is hot, everybody.
Right.
Yeah, we should say too real quick, this is just an important safety message. Like wax can ignite on fire, and you can cause fires with this stuff. So we're trying to keep low temperatures is basically what we're doing. We're just barely getting to the melting point, and then we're keeping it right there. If you turn the heat on and leave it really hot, it can ignite. If you got wax into your into like a gas burner or something like that on a stove, it could be a real problem. So we don't want anybody starting fires.
Yeah, this was a mistake I learned maybe when I was in middle school or something. I was into melting candles back then, and left a pot of wax melting on my stove while I left the house to go play with my friends. And then I come back and the pot is on fire outside because the family that I had visiting at the time had quickly taken it out of the kitchen. And then I had the bright idea to go out and pour some water on it to put out the fire, and got a ball of flame in front of my face. Good times, good learnings. So yes, please be careful. Using these pots, it's they have I guess a nice safety feature on it. The plug that goes into it is magnetic, and so it easily pops out in case someone hits it, or it falls over. It won't stay hot. So yeah, just something to be careful about. All right. This next one, I'm going to let that sit there for a little moment.
And I guess I'll just say, like, so you're using the slush casting method here because it's a large area to fill.
It's a large volume, yeah.
Yeah, because you'll get that sink hole if you don't, right?
Yeah. Well, and not only the sinkhole, and the sinkhole that John's referring to is you'll see a kind of a hole form in the top there. But you'll also, I think, if you were to compare it to the original part that you molded, you'll begin to you'll see that it's shrunken or warped in some dimension.
Okay, so this will help with the shrinkage.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And the cool thing is, wax does not take very long to cool off. So you see how long he's sitting there waiting for it to cool. It's not doesn't take too long.
Well, when it's in large volumes, it can take a while.
Sure.
I found though with the small parts that I cast for like for an 18th scale figure, that stuff will cool pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And also in that case, I've been casting into a cold, a temperature cold mold, and I think that also speeds it up. But there's something about the silicone will actually heat up, which I think would inhibit cooling as it draws the heat out of the wax. All right. I'm probably dumping it a little too fast here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I'm going to switch over to let's come back over here. I'm going to do an injection example. So first, I'm going to take my plaster molds out of the water.
So the plaster molds is something I have not messed with yet. I'd like to try. So I'm real curious, like what kind of plaster are you using?
This is standard plaster of Paris.
Okay.
And it sets up really quickly. It's cost effective, cost efficient. You know, my goal is to only get a few good casts, and you know, I think Scott was saying he does a few casts of his parts, and he'll take the best parts from each. Because you know, sometimes depending, you're kind of figuring out what the right way to rotate a mold is and stuff like that. So you're gonna learn with each cast. But yeah, you know, we could do a whole other session on plaster. But
I do have an old plaster mold that I made back when I was reading your blog, and I think that was one of the first molds you had tried to make.
Yeah.
So I did one just for fun, and I didn't have much success with it, but it's still there. I wonder if I do the soaking method. I want to maybe try that again.
Yeah, my very first plaster mold I cast Asbro into, and I did not soak it, and promptly sealed the wax cast into the mold, and was not able to get the mold apart without using a hammer. That was a good experiment. Big learning there. Now, let's see. Let me switch over. Bring back. Now I'm using this pan here. Usually, I just do the wax work right on my work mat there, but here I'm using a pan with some parchment paper in it. And the wax doesn't stick to the parchment paper. It's great. Now, for this is the mold that I used for the torso, and what it gives me is a piece that looks like, light over here, a piece that looks like this. So this is half the torso, and I can do another session on kind of how I create half torso mold. But to get some of those articulation, those hollowed parts there, you just set these fixtures into the mold.
Yeah, that'd be a good one because I haven't done that yet. It'd be nice to, maybe I can follow along and see if you can teach me how to do it while we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to inject in this mold, and I'm going to just do a dump mold in here, and just see how that goes. All right. Get our light going here. So first I'm going to do the dump mold.
Is that a cat?
It is, yeah.
I like it. It's good.
All right, here we go. When you're bringing wax from one place to another, it's good to have some kind of catch under it because it's gonna.
Yeah. Do you remember that picture I showed?
Here we go.
Wax all over my bathroom.
No, I don't think I saw that one.
That's way back in my Instagram feed if people are interested, but looks like somebody got murdered in my bathroom because I had that red Scott Hensey wax all over the place.
All right. So yeah, just like that. Super simple. And then I'm just gonna let that sit and let that cool. Give a little rock, let it kind of move into place there. Now it's very viscous relative to and the viscosity also depends on its temperature. At the melting point, it's going to be at its most viscous, but the higher the temperature, it's going to get more fluid, less viscous. And I usually when I'm checking for the viscosity, I'm actually dipping a popsicle stick here into the wax, and I pull it out and I see how quickly it drips off. If it clings a lot, if it's lower viscosity, you're going to see it cling to the stick more. If it runs right off, it means you're at a higher temperature. And so over time, I've kind of picked up on what that looks like, and you try to get it less viscous when I'm injecting, so that I can go through the syringe tip more easily. And if you're watching carefully here, you'll see the shine of the light on the wax, and that shine will become more dull as it's cooler. Let's see if we can see it.
Just like the shine in my eyes when it gets past 8:30.
And you'll actually see around the sides it's cooling more quickly. And also pulling off the side here as it cools. That's the shrinking action. Anyways, so next I'm going to do the syringe into this mold here. Now, one thing I've learned over time, these syringes can get kind of tough to pull. A neat little trick that I've started to do here is actually just rub some Vaseline on the rubber side there, and that allows it to move a little more easily through the syringe. Also, putting a little Vaseline on the tip here keeps the Vaseline keeps the wax from sticking to it. All right.
We had a question about, have we done any videos on making plaster molds? And we haven't done anything here. Have you done anything on your Instagram?
I do have a couple of posts. If you go to the very beginning of my feed, you'll see some examples there, and more recently, I think stuff from November, December. I might have a post or two with that.
But yeah, it'd be a good one to do here.
Yeah. All right. So it's moving smoothly there. I'm gonna.
I was gonna ask you real quick. Why do you even mess with the lure lock?
Why did I what?
Why do you even mess with the lure lock? I end up just pulling that off of my syringe for the wax,
and just doing it doing it just without the tip.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the advantage to having the tip on there is that I can insert it into the mold. So that means I can ensure that as I'm plunging the syringe, the wax is going to go in and not and not leak out from the top where I'm interfacing with the mold. So
Yeah.
Instead of being right at the top there, I can insert it and I know it's going to get in there. That can also be helpful when you're and I think that's really kind of the intention of injection, is that you can really get it in to your mold, as opposed to squirting wax into the top of a sprue. And that's not really injection. That's just pouring through a smaller hole, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this up and quickly change my view. So hopefully you can see me do it together. All right. All right, got it in there. Let me just switch over here. All right, and then I'm gonna put that right in there and press. Plunge. There we go. All right, and that's it. Now, another helpful trick if you're doing this is to go ahead and squeeze out the rest of that wax in there if you're not going to do any more molds, because the longer it's in there, the more it's going to cool and the harder it is to clean off. So do that, take off that tip. It's still going to be a little hot, and get that plunger out, and then let it cool just like that. And that wipes right off. So that's oh yeah, here we go. View here. So we see this guy here. Actually, you can see now it's actually bowed as it's shrunken, and it pops right out. Here we go. And I've got a nice copy of the cat sculpt, and I can clean it up and really work on the details with harder carving tools, polish it up, all the things you can't do with wax. Now, in the time it took you to tell you that, the wax cast here is likely already finished. So we're going to open this up real quick. Oh, look at that. And there's my half of the torso. So
we had a question about using the pressure pot with wax. In my experience, it's just so fast. It just cools so fast that there's not enough time. Yeah.
So here's the wax cast. Now, when working with plaster, your wax is going to pick up some of that plaster. You can kind of see this. I don't know how clearly it can be seen here. There's a little kind of like powder across the surface here. I'm not concerned about putting that back in, but parts like this where there's a lot of kind of plaster residue there, I'll just throw that part out. Now, when it's just cooled like this, it's fragile. Even when it's cooled longer, it's still fragile. Wax is a fragile medium, but there are so many more advantages to it than some of the other mediums out there. So here, we're just removing these fixtures. And you got your part. Then I clean it up, easy to clean up, wham bam. All right, and maybe the last thing before we switch over to John, I'm gonna take my mold, my casting out of here and see how much it.
Yeah, I gotta run and grab my cell phone holder thing here, so I'll be right back.
Sure. Yep. So yep. Take off this top part here. It looks like it's pretty thin, so I'm going to be as careful as possible when I'm taking this out, because I might end up breaking it. Usually I'd want to fill that in a little longer. And actually, while it's cool like that, I could fill that in. Can't even see. Sorry. Light. Anyways, it's not too thin, or maybe it's thicker at the bottom, but thinner on the sides here. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and fill this up, let it cool while John's doing his part. There we go. Oh, yeah, this is why you use bendable plastic for your containers. Don't use stainless steel unless you plan to keep the wax in there. But because I can bend it, I can easily break the wax off and throw it back into the pot and melt it down again. Look at that. Good stuff. Let me fill this in real quick. All right, here it comes. Sorry, that stuff cooled in there pretty quickly. Let's do it real quick. All right, now maybe we'll get to see it create a sinkhole in there. All right. So I'm going to let this cool down. I'm going to throw these chunks back into the pressure pot, and then towards the end of this, I'll show how I pour this stuff out into the baking sheet. Make the chips again.
That's the other nice thing. Wax is, as long as you're careful with it not to contaminate it, it's reusable materials.
Yeah.
And my Elmo camera stopped working all of a sudden, so we're gonna try the cell phone, see if it works or not. Last time we had the same kind of technical difficulties when you have to figure that one out. But let me try my camera real quick, see if it even shows. Nope, doesn't seem to want to work on the cell phone, so I'm sorry, I don't have the overhead camera. But I do have wax here in a pot. Look at that.
What happened to that camera you were just using?
It's here, got the lights on, but it's not being recognized by the operating system somehow, so. But I mean, technical difficulties. So let me just ask, I guess, like what kind of what are the things that got you into, like, why did you go down this path of wax? Why are you here?
Yeah. So when I first started sculpting, I was watching. I think what kind of inspired me first were videos like the Craftsman's free range space chicken figure that he did, and I went out and got some Aves Fix-It Sculpt, the epoxy clay, and pretty quickly realized like I wasn't up for waiting for the wax to cure, for that clay to cure. And so then I got into Sculpey and using Sculpey Firm. I found some other sculptors on YouTube that were doing some really cool stuff. And what was nice about it was I I didn't have to finish quickly, because it wouldn't get hard until I baked it, right?
Mhm.
Um,
But
but you also couldn't touch it. So what I first used when I was doing my Bounty Buddies, the very first one was my Bosk, and so I realized I had to put I had to sculpt it on an armature that was on some kind of base that I could hold, and so this was intended to be. I thought I had a label on here. Of the four that I've done, I also planned to do at the time Greedo, and I intentionally was not going to do Boba Fett. There's too much Boba Fett out in the world. But I had to use a armature like this. This is just some wire brought through this block with some foil around it. You can kind of see the original wire in the original sculpt here. Now that addressed the issue of speed, meaning I didn't have to go fast, and because I was just getting into sculpting, I kind of didn't know what I really wanted to do, or rather what I was doing. I was just kind of figuring it out as it was going along. I didn't kind of have any tried and true strategies, and but ultimately there was still this desire to get finer details. And as firm as Super Sculpey is, in its hardest variety, it still lacked for me some of that finer detail. And I also really wanted to hold it, because your fingers get cramped holding on to something like this too. As I'm doing my search, throughout the internet about sculpting and seeing different sculptors, I come across Scott Hensey's video and learn about wax. And yeah, so that's where I was like, okay, I need to learn more about this. I need to get some wax and try this for myself. Fortunately, Asbro wax, AZBRO, you can buy at the store. So I did that, or you can pay a whole lot more money for vintage stuff that people are selling on eBay, and go that route. Now,
or you can make your own. That's the other.
Or you can make your own. That's going to be a future episode for sure.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, I was a similar kind of path, and I think, to be honest, I hadn't even like, I had messed with maybe Super Sculpey and some things like that like years ago, but I just epoxy sculpt wasn't really doing it for me. I like it. I still use it as like as an armature basically, but I don't like being under the time wedge of like, you got to get this thing done in that hour window before it gets too hard to even work with. I struggle with that. And I found like, I think it was I saw the Scott Hensey video, and I think I was talking to you at the same time, and you hooked me up with some of that vintage Hasbro, or vintage Kenner wax rather.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, well, that's it. Like, with this tool, it's possible. And so like I started into the sculpting stuff. I felt like there's a way to where I wanted to go, because everything else seemed like, and not to sound harsh, but like to me, my results in like Sculpey or in epoxy sculpt seemed like amateurish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where it was like not as much detail as I wanted, not as smooth as I wanted. Yeah. And once we got to the wax, it was like, this is the tool where I can get to where I want to be, and it's worth doing now. So like that totally
is a great point. Yeah. There was definitely I guess I'm thinking of the logistics of sculpting, but it's also the quality.
Yeah.
That I can really control those finer lines. I think about some of the some of the things in my IG-88 one. Like I was able to do reasonably well with Sculpey here, but if I wanted to take this to like the next level, I would have kind of taken out all the artifacts that made it look like it was sculpted in clay. And I guess some of those artifacts are, just kind of the inconsistency of the line depth here, the kind of straightness of those lines, the kind of pillowy effect that I think clay sculpts can have. Yeah. So wax definitely is a next level of refinement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so
take a look at this.
Yeah, good.
I think this was a Scott Hensey sculpt, but doing this in Sculpey, like it
break.
Yeah. Well, it would, if you didn't have an armature in it, it would break. Wax would break too, but there are just some super fine details in this. I mean, if you look at the back of that, like there's cool. Like a little cut into each of those vertebrae there. I didn't have the skill at the time to be able to do this in a softer clay, and wax kind of helped me jump further. Further faster into the kind of the quality of my sculpts.
How do you cast something like that? That's the
other
mind bender.
I've been looking at this thing. It's the vertebrae is actually a separate piece from the rib cage.
That helps.
Yeah.
I was gonna say too here, I got the low tech tools. So I got
there you go, perfect.
This is just a cheap whisk that I got at Goodwill for like 50 cents or something. Same with the pan, it's a Goodwill purchase. Same deal, probably 50 cents. I wish I could show you my hot plate, but it's a Presto, so it's the same kind of brand as what he's got in the pot, but mine's just a hot plate. I got that at Goodwill also. I think that was like $10 or something. But it works great.
Do you have it right in front of you?
I do.
Can you turn your camera down?
There we go.
Oh, cool. So it's just like a griddle plate. Yeah.
Yep. And this is
sweet.
The Presto. This is the control over here, same as yours. It's got the temperatures on it. It's got warm, perfect. 200, 250, all the way up to 400. But I never go that high with wax.
Yeah.
I'd say like 250, 300 when I'm starting. I'll keep it there for maybe like 5 minutes. And then I turn it way down to warm. Like I never hardly go past warm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can put multiple pans on here, which is also kind of cool. So I can take these size pans, I can fit 3 of them on here.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing different wax recipes, I can do small batches all at the same time. Yeah. So
do you put a lid on those pots?
I have lids. I typically just use them after I'm done just to keep the dust out, but I don't, not while I'm heating things up. No.
So just want to show, I'm going to take this this cast out. What I did was I filled it back in solid and didn't do the continual dump pour kind of thing. But here's that sinkhole that John was referring to earlier. And let's see what this looks like as I take it out. Now, I have a feeling, and it might be hard to test, but when I yeah.
Oh, that's your dad.
There we go. Yeah, that's my dad.
That's cool.
Holding a bike pump and a guitar neck there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so actually what I want to do, before I pulled it in here, the wall got pretty, was cooled down pretty significantly. And so I was thinking, is that going to affect how well it bonds, the new wax bonds to it? Because hot wax poured onto cold wax won't necessarily melt the surface so that it bonds. But what I want to do here real quick is I'm going to actually slice through this and maybe we can see.
Oh no.
Here we go. There we go.
That's solid. Look at that.
Yeah. It looks like it may have bonded with it. That's kind of cool.
I was just reading Recycle Galaxy says they learned about wax from a book called Pop Sculpture, which that was in that recent video that Craftsman released. Looks like a really cool book. I haven't read it yet. I got it on in my Amazon cart right now. And then YouTube's Robert Talone, which we've mentioned numerous times, but he's got all kinds of great content on his channel. And then soon I realized it was the ideal medium for me too. Also, my daughter bought me this book for Christmas, which is basically one of those books. It's sort of a reference book for prop making and theater type stuff. But yeah, how to cast small metal and rubber parts by William A. Cannon, and it's got a lot of great stuff in here about plaster molds, and then urethane resins and things like that. So it's a pretty good reference too. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to show too, I have a couple of different molds that I'm going to try. So I have some this is a mold made with that 2-part silicone that you can get. I can't remember the name of it. If you remember, help me out, Kerf, but it's the same stuff Craftsman was using.
Like craft putty or something?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Something like that. I forget the name.
Basically a silicone putty. Yeah.
You can get it on Amazon, part A and part B, and you mix them together. This is like a G.I. Joe part and then I switched out the center of it with a different piece. So that's why it's yellow instead of purple. And then I have this mold that I made, and I basically I had a wooden buck that I made this shape out of and made a silicone mold of it, but then you can still see the wood grain. I don't know if you can kind of see that in the light. The wood grain transferred into the silicone mold. So I didn't do enough prep work in the original. So I'm thinking maybe if I cast that in wax, I can clean all that up nice and easy. This guy this is made in Umu, which before I knew what I was doing, I had a bunch of Umu, and I made the very first Nacho Libre figure with this stuff. So this is Nacho's waist. The other thing I did with this, it's like a He-Man style waist, and it's got little inset places here for the legs, and I did not fill that in first with silicone, so it caught bubbles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's another one where I'm like, maybe if I cast that in wax, I can carve that stuff out. I've done that before in resin, and that dust is just disgusting, and I will never do that to myself again. So wax is a nice way to do that, where it's not toxic stuff. So that's kind of what I was gonna see if I got enough wax to cast those today. Like I said, yeah, super low tech. I did put some cardboard down here, so it's not going everywhere, but I'll try that He-Man guy first and see what happens with that. So this is just a basic like pour, like a dump mold. I've turned it, it's turned inside of the mold so as not to catch bubbles. I was gonna say the other thing, I was talking to Mr. Geddes, Stephen Geddes. He said that when he would cast wax, he typically has it just before solidifying. So like you want it warm but not hot, because he said that helps with that separation we were talking about last time.
Yep.
So if you have it like,
I think it also helps with like shrink. Like if it's not
might.
not cooling longer, maybe it's not shrinking as much.
It might. I don't know. But yeah, basically, you can kind of tell like this. I wish I could show you an overhead view, but this stuff is sort of starting to get solid on the sides, but where it's hot on the actual pan, it's not. And so you kind of have to play the game of like, how hot do you get it? And that depends. We had talked about this too, but it depends on how big of a pour you're making, because that stuff will cool as you're pouring it.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to.
That's why I was asking about the lid on the pot. I think if you had a lid on it, it'll keep
it
more of it. hotter or more even?
It could. I just I live in the desert and I don't typically worry about things getting cool here. So I don't even think about that stuff, but that's a good point. And now I've let it get too cool, so I'm gonna have to like warm this back up. But this guy poured pretty well, or at least it looks like from the outside anyway.
What did you use to pour that in?
I just dumped it right in. Like so, this
from the pot,
just straight out of that little pan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have same as Kerf. I do have a cup. This is my like wax cup that I use, and you can flexible stuff. You can break that wax off. This is a different type of wax that I'm using here, so I'm not going to do that right now. But I like those kind of party cups. They're easy. They're cheap. They're easy to find, and they work really well for that. Let's see if I can get this mold apart here. You guys can see. And then it's got a little, yeah, it's good. Yeah, that turned out pretty nice, actually.
Sweet.
So you can probably see the bubble I caught on the inside there.
A little bit. Yep.
That was in the original silicone. But yeah, it's gonna be easy to do. Easy to fix that in wax. And then the other thing was it's got this, it's got the like He-Man type details on it, and I wanted to smooth those details out. So that's another really good application for wax. Like that's an easy thing to do. So, and then I can break off the sprue. That was easy. Toss that back in the pot. Boom.
Boom.
Done.
No cup waste. That's
Nope.
what I like.
For sure. Like, so you kind of have to be careful, you don't want to get a bunch of like hairs in there or any sort of like resin bits or whatever. But if you're just doing stuff with wax, it's not too hard to keep it clean.
You gonna do another cast?
Yeah, I'm gonna try this Batman one here. Just looking at the comments. Brett says he's gonna get some of that putty to mess around with. Craftsman video was inspiring. I think pretty much all of his videos are inspiring. The man is the nicest guy too. He's just such a sweet person. You can't help but like want to do good things after watching one of those videos. Also, I was going to say, I hope the timing is better. We're trying to do a little earlier because West Coast, we're all West Coast here, and East Coasters are having a hard time staying up late to watch our videos. We want to make sure we have the chat open. That's the whole point, is to kind of interact with people. If you get questions or you want comments or whatever, we want to interact with people. So let us know if that's working better for people. Okay, I'm gonna give the Batman one a shot here. Sure you get all the dust out of there. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do this G.I. Joe one inside the Batman one in case I lose some goop off the side. Nope. Because I'm a professional. Not really. I was going to say that too. We're just learning ourselves here. So some of the things we're telling you are things that we've learned from experience, but we're not like professional toy makers or anything like that. So,
but we have talked to professional toy makers.
That is true. We've done a lot of research trying to figure this out for ourselves. So it's not coming from nowhere. Just know that we're still learning and things might be a little different. So if you've got a different way of doing things or different insights, please let us know. That'd be a good way to like just throw it in the comments now or throw it in the chat or, send us a message or something. Okay. yeah, I got a couple cooling here. I guess I'll pour the rest in this back into little mice molds. I'm not sure what else to do. Ran out of molds here. I normally don't do this in my bedroom. I've got a shed that I do most of this stuff in out back, but it's not really good for showing video and stuff like that. So we had to make some adjustments today. Oh, I do have one. I have a failed mold I want to show you. And then one to kind of show like it can happen, and two, like maybe there's some ideas as to why or how to fix it or avoid it in the future. But let me just get all this wax out of here real quick. Okay, used it up. So normally now I would scrape that out with a silicone spatula. That way I make sure I get it all out as much as I can into the molds, and then you can use a paper towel and just wipe the residual and you'll have a spotless pan. That's usually how I do it. I don't have all that stuff in front of me right now, so I'm not going to do it right now.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show mine. I'm going to dump my Presto pot out.
Perfect.
What's great about the Presto pot that I can just detach the plug there and just pick the whole thing up and take it over. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to pour out that remainder. All right, here we go. Get some paper towels ready. There we go. Now I actually have this this pan on a piece of chipboard as an insulator because the hot wax on the vinyl work mat there can warp it. But just as John was saying, you know, you're gonna have some residual in there. You can scrape it out. I usually turn the heat up a little bit and let it melt off the side of the pot, and then pour it again before I wipe it clean. All right, so yeah, that's this. I'm gonna set this down on the floor and try not to step in it. But yeah, I'll go ahead and clean this off. Back to you.
Yeah, so you would want to paint. The reason we pour it into small thin sheets like that is like when it cools, it'll be easy to break into small chunks, and it's an even thickness. So that same kind of deal helps you measure out how much you're using or putting in. And that's super helpful. I like using both methods. I'll fill up these little dump molds with little mice and stuff, and then I'll do the same as Kerf's doing here and put a thin sheet out. I bought little cookie sheets again from Goodwill. Same deal, is kind of like $2 for a pair of them or something like that, and they get used a lot. So let me put my camera back on and I'll show you. So this is the G.I. Joe part. Let's see if we can pull that out. So it just pops right out. Nice and easy. There we go. So now the idea with this is to make a stand out of it. And so I can put the peg in the middle, whether that's a post, like a metal post, or I could even use a wooden dowel. And I can clean up some of those details. I can add details, do whatever I want in the wax stage. And then I can mold and cast this in resin where it's a much harder material, and we can have a little stand. So that's the idea with that guy. than the Batman one. Let's see if I can get this guy out. Should just pop out. There we are. It's very warm still, but turned out pretty good. You can see it's got a little bit of residue from the mold because I had paint in there. But that's another one. I'm going to clean that up and get rid of the details. We'll maybe that'll be another session. We can talk about smoothing, and we'll work. I can work on that one as an example. Failed. This is one of those car molds. I think you've seen this one, Kerf. Can you guess what's in here?
One of the willow waxes.
Yep. You know which one?
Is it ice?
Yeah. And so would you tell the viewers what is the main component in that willow ice that might have caused this problem?
And to describe the problem, I guess what I'm seeing is that it's is it whitish on the top, or?
Oh, sorry. It's stuck in here. I don't know if you can see this, but like it's starting to tear the mold as I try and remove the piece. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, this was the problem that Robert Talone had with some old wax he had used in a silicone mold, and it has to do with the carnauba wax. Yeah, just a higher content in it of carnauba, and I actually have, might be worth showing.
I think, and I'll just preface this by saying too, I cast probably 6 of these before this happened, and they I struggled with getting them out, but I got them out. And so I think it's 2 things. One, it has to do with carnauba content. 2, I think it has to do with the heat. I had it pretty warm by the end of the session, and potentially this mold was also very warm. Yeah. But I'll say with other wax recipes, we haven't had any of these issues. They just pop right out, no big deal. It was a lot like that Robert Talone video where he just kind of like all of a sudden is stuck in the mold and it's like, what happened? I don't.
Yeah, I was thinking that just as we put plaster in water to soak, I wonder if just cooling the silicone down in cold water beforehand would kind of achieve the same outcome, even if it's a little wet inside. That might help things along too.
Yeah, definitely could have been.
But here's the carnauba wax. It's flaky in this form, but I guess you can't really tell anything about it. It's used as, I think, one of the hardeners in it.
It's an essential ingredient. It's a very stiff wax, so it gives you that kind of like solid feel rather than like a candle wax, which is real soft. But it's the amount that's in this mix. So the willow ice has a high amount of carnauba compared to the other types of waxes, whereas say a Kenner wax from the 80s is more of a equal mixture of like carnauba, candelilla, some of those other waxes I'm forgetting now, but and maybe we can do that on another episode too. We'll pull out the recipes and I can show you exactly how much carnauba is in this thing relative to everything else.
Yeah, it'd be good to do some batches. We need to look back at our data sheet and see which one to focus on next. I feel like I was getting close to that vintage Kenner, to the 90s Kenner.
I've got the 80s Kenner, I think, figured out. That's my next science project.
Oh yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
So and that's using our special ingredient.
Yes.
All right.
Which not to be cryptic about it, it's just it's a wax blend that another company makes, and that company went out of business, so we had to find a different company that made something similar, and then had to try it out to see if it had the same effects, and I think it does. So yes, that's the next iteration. And that I don't want to speak for you, Kerf, but like for me, that 80s Kenner recipe is a dream to work with. I really like working with it. The other stuff is very good. It's very, very subtle changes. I don't know that most people would probably even notice, but to me, the 80s Kenner it's a real in the middle blend where it's easy to carve, it's easy to sculpt, it's easy to pour into a mold. Just everything's simple, easy with it.
Yeah, one thing to the viewers right now, one thing that John and I have, I think it was maybe early or maybe the same time last year where we were experimenting with these waxes.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you're actually sculpting with wax, and then sculpt with a different wax, you begin to pick up on some of those subtleties. It's kind of like wine tasting, where after you do it for a while, you might begin to pick up on the different notes in it and stuff like that. But if you're just starting out, all wine tastes the same. And wax can be the same way.
Yeah.
But what I was struggling with was how to categorize the things we experienced with it. And with the intention of saying, all right, well, now there's a measurement of each of those categories. It's more this, less that kind of thing. But part of that measurement and getting consistency across, especially, 30 different recipes we might be testing out, is consistency in those measurements to really know we're making a difference. And we have limited tools, and we're kind of mostly using our feel to sense, oh, this is harder than that kind of thing. Oh man, that's embedded, isn't it?
Yeah, so I got one out, but you can see how much I destroyed the mold doing it. Unfortunately. So yeah, it's difficult too, because even the tools that I'm using to make wax batches are different than what Kerf is using, because we're not in the same place. So it's even hard to compare between what he makes and what I make, just because of the tools we're using and how we're measuring things out, how we're heating things up. It's a struggle.
That's why we're kind of putting it out into the universe. We are the Wax Lab guys. We hope to one day, be in a lab together and working on this stuff. That'd be really cool. Until then,
that'd be a lot of fun.
We are using our five senses to determine the quality of wax.
So I'll put it out in the universe. If there's a way we could get paid for doing all that.
Oh
that'd be cool.
Well, I think we'd have to we'd have to corrupt the software that 3D modelers use, so everyone just goes back to doing it by hand.
I do. This is maybe a deeper conversation, but I do think there's still a place. For me, it feels like hand sculpted items have a feel, and that might be a place for let's hand sculpt these things, and then we can 3D scan them to clean them up, put them in, ship them over to China or whatever you want to do, but make a 3D model of something that's hand sculpted. It's an idea.
Well, there's in the realm of and now we're getting into what people value about the things they buy. Is the feel of something hand sculpted, is that what is that appealing to? Is that appealing to a need, a utilitarian need, or is it hard? Is it appealing to someone's nostalgia? And I would argue it's more nostalgia than it is utilitarian, especially in the realm of toys.
Well, I think also, though, there's something to be said for having so much digital stuff out there that knowing that something was done by hand, and even knowing the artist that did it, I think has value to people these days.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, and I would put that into the realm of nostalgia, but it's perhaps not nostalgia, but I think it is appreciation of the methodology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to have that, like, hey, we made this. Here it is. We made it by hand, but we'll scan it in and we'll mass produce it if you want thousands of them or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got? Or you got more? There you go.
This is finally cooled, so I can show. It's always fun to do. Still warm, actually kind of hot, but I wish I had one of those infrared thermometers. But here we go. Look at that.
Oops, the infrared camera would be even better.
Yeah. So then I just proceed to. Now it's still it's still soft. It bends before it breaks. If I were to let it cool longer, it would snap. But while it's in this soft state, it's easy to go ahead and break off the size chunks you want. Ooh, hot.
Yeah, I'll say this Batman thing that I cast is still really warm to the touch too. Like even something this small is taking a while to cool off.
Now, something to note here. I'm not sure how easy it is to tell. Is that there's really no striation of ingredients in this, which is, I think, a sign of good quality ingredients or a good mix, good balance of stuff, because you don't have anything settling. What we've seen in some of the willow wax that John has made is, I think we ended up using a talc that wasn't refined enough. And so the heavier talc particles ended up settling pretty quickly. And thinking about it though, I wonder if that settling also had to do with the mixture of the other ingredients that allowed that, meaning that it would like flow really easily, meaning it was less viscous. Those heavier elements can descend more quickly. So yeah,
I agree. That's the thing about making a wax recipe is there's a lot of different variables, and it's really hard to like narrow down which one is causing the issue that you're dealing with. So we're working on that. That's the fun of it. So
I was thinking it would be either we do a pre-recorded interview with Scott Hinsey, but to talk to someone who's been working with wax, for decades, to pick their brain about the kinds of qualities they've seen change when they change their recipe.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you want us to interview somebody and who you might want to hear from.
Even if no one says they want to, we're still going to do
it. We're going to try anyway. I'd love to do that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's it's one of those things like like you said again, we're just trying to figure this out. We haven't really messed with this stuff our whole lives, and there are people out there who have done it. So why not ask?
Yeah, I was really I was surprised and also really inspired by how accessible someone like Scott Hinsey was to talking about his process, sharing his wax recipe.
Same with Stephen Geddes. I mean, he shared a recipe with us as well. Yeah, those guys have been very, very open and cool with us. And I think maybe there's some sort of like, oh wow, somebody's still using the old methods. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we said that 1,000 times at DesignerCon. Was like, we just like doing things the old way. I enjoy this process immensely, and I like the archaeology of it and the science of trying to figure out how to make these things myself. I don't know that it's super efficient, probably easier to just do something in Nomad, but to me, I really enjoy this process. So hopefully you guys do too.
To do something in what?
Oh, Nomad, the 3D modeling program. Oh. Yeah. I've been playing with some of those programs, to be honest with you.
What?
And it's not intuitive.
Sacrilege.
Well, it's just one of those things that, like, I can't talk crap about it unless I try it.
I downloaded what was it? Was
Blender?
it Blender? Is Blender the free one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was the intuitive nature of it, like even how to select the anchors on a box or something like that. Yeah, there was like, what am I missing here? And I use design software. Like that's my day job.
Right. And so Dave from Dimension X Toys was next door to us at DesignerCon, and what he does is he sculpts digitally in virtual reality.
That's cool.
And I think that might be the closest thing that I could come to actually feeling comfortable sculpting in digitally if I had that tool. Because that makes sense. You rotate it, you see all the angles, you pull something out and push it in, So the thing he was saying that was a little different is that it's just it's digital. So there's no like grab material and stick it on or take material away. It's just push or pull. So it's still a little bit weird. People are commenting on your bare feet, Kerf.
You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. Yeah, my office here. Let's see. No, I want to show you my office, but my my desk here. I'll step back and show the desk. It's the only room in the house that has carpet, and so I actually have this the plastic office chair covers, for the carpet. But yeah, so I got the workspace on this wall, and then the wall behind is my day job desk. But yeah, little time wax and clay and sketchbooks. The resin and silicone that I'm like using on a daily basis, though it's been a couple of weeks. Keep that close by. All the little condiment cups of all the various projects and little bits and bobs. Then the shelf of inspiration of other artists. My inspo board. My Death and Strawberries custom signage. Look at that great detail, so close up. So good.
Don't get too close.
And then, let's see, my modeling clay for like mold walls, receipts for expenses, my big tools, my little display shelf here of jars of categorized tools, the flammable stuff right below the pot there. Sorry, John, I know that's your realm. But
made me cringe for a second there.
Then my jar of polystyrene. Yeah, that's the space.
Nice. See, I'm a little jealous. I don't have.
And then the tank and the pressure pot.
Yes.
Yeah.
The all important pressure pot. Yeah, I don't have a one place for all my things yet. I have big plans for the shed. I don't know if you've seen pictures on my Instagram, but that's going to be the tool area, workspace. So similar to what Kerf's got there, I'm going to be setting that up in my shed. Hopefully, be making a couple of videos to put on my YouTube channel with that, like building workbenches and things like that. So be on the lookout for that one. But yeah, right now I'm kind kind of spread between 3 different rooms at my wife's office, my bedroom here, and then the shed. So I had to go grab all my stuff and bring it in here this morning. Yeah.
All right. Well,
That about does it, huh?
that does.
Wax.
Wax
Wax stuff. This one too is the 90s Kenner stuff. We get this from Dave at Dreamcastle Studios. If you're on Instagram, he's Dreamcastle Studios there. Very nice guy. Another one that's been really helpful with stuff and sharing things with us. And the 90s stuff, it's just a little like soft. It's a different feel. It works too, but like Kerf was saying, once you get a little bit like used to something and the other one feels weird, it's just it's like driving a different car.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be using that 90s stuff from Dreamcastle. And now the stuff that we got from Dreamcastle was stuff he had lying around from his days there at Fab Studios. So it's the vintage stuff, not necessarily a recipe that we can readily make, but we are in pursuit of something that's equivalent. I actually find, while it is on the softer side compared to that 80s Kenner and to Hasbro, I find that even being able to sculpt with a loop tool here. Now, usually on harder waxes, I could use this loop tool and it would just kind of burnish the surface. It's not taking big chunks of wax away. It's really kind of smoothing out any of the surface blemishes. But I find with this softer wax that I can actually rake the wax and not just kind of polish it, which I find
which could be an advantage, right?
To be helpful. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's definitely helpful, and I think it's going to be helpful for the organic shapes that I'm going to be doing, or rather the more clothed, soft clothing, not armor, kind of figures from the Fringe line. All of them are in jumpsuits that are flexible and have folds and stuff like that, and so I don't want to be wrestling with a harder wax to get that.
I'm super excited for those. Can't wait to see what you do with them. And to have like a 2-part body there that you've already got figured out, like that's real exciting.
Yeah. Once I finish getting these guys polished up, so this is a cleaned up one. This is on the right here, and this guy here still needs some TLC around the legs. It's pretty rough through there, and so what I'm doing, one is making sure that it's standing straight. Somehow the right leg ended up being shorter than the left, so he kind of stands at an angle, a little tilt
on all your casts.
Yeah. I guess just the I'm not quite sure what it was, because it felt like he was standing straight when he in clay. Maybe there was some more shrink in the right leg than the left leg when I was casting the wax. But in some upcoming posts, I'm going to show how I ended up filling in the base of the foot, and actually I wrapped it. I can kind of show that now. I would wrap the base of the foot in some wax paper here, some of the parchment paper, and then just fill that in with wax, and then sand it down and basically extend it with without having to go significantly over. and then also smoothing these down. I'm starting to use those some small files, and using that tip you shared from Stephen of sanding with rubbing alcohol.
Yep.
It keeps the wax from getting gunky on your file or sandpaper, and yeah. So
I say one of these days, hopefully this next round, I'll have my general kale sculpted in wax, and I can show some of that work too. It's been way too long in the process.
The year of the kale.
Yeah, last year was the year of the kale, and I didn't make that one, so this year is the year. Well, last year was the year of the kale from Super 7, but this year is my year.
There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess too, if you guys got questions or things you want to see us do in the future, throw those in the comments as well. Love to hear from you. I did see that General Porpoise is in here interested in wax now, and I'm really excited for that. So hit us up. We'll hook you up with a sample or two, and you can love to see you trying it.
Definitely.
What else you got?
I don't got anything else.
Okay. Well, it's always fun doing stuff with you. I really appreciate you taking the time, Kerf, and everybody else for taking the time to watch us play with wax today.
Always a pleasure, John.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, man.
Till the next one.
Yep.
Cheers.